This specific video will be a response to Tessa's video on fan culture and fandom and being a fan and what that means, as well as sort of a response to Matt's video that was responding to Tessa's. And I was really excited to do this topic because my identity as a fan has been something I've been thinking about a lot over the past year or so. I've always been a little bit obsessive about the things that I like. Harry Potter, Star Wars, Narnia. As a kid, these were things that I would get maybe a little bit too into. Probably to a very annoying extent. But it was fun, and I loved having such a passion for that stuff. So it's only natural that when I started getting more into the internet in spaces like Tumblr and YouTube and stuff, that I fell kind of headfirst into fandoms. As I was growing up, being a fan meant being in a fandom. But I feel like that is something that I've started moving away from more and more as time has gone on. And this is something Matt brings up in his video. When you're qualifying being a fan, you can separate yourself from being active in the fandom and still being a fan of something. And I feel like that's been the distinction I've had to make over the last couple years. I've become less and less interested in the community around things and more interested in the wider appreciation of art forms. This is probably because I'm up at film school where all we do is analyze and critique film. And that's not a bad thing. That's made me appreciate the things I love more. But it's also kind of widened my perspective. And has kind of caused me to bump heads against some parts of fandom culture. For example, there's this idea around that I feel like your enjoyment of something is tied to how good you think it is. And specifically, a lot of good examples in the Marvel fandom. Like, I don't like Ant-Man, right? Like, those movies just don't do it for me. So am I still a Marvel fan? And I think most people would agree, but then you start adding on stuff, and it's like, well, there are all these kind of universal problems in every Marvel movie. Like, problems are just, it's a problem with Marvel's formula. And I don't dislike Marvel because of them, but I can't acknowledge. And then you start getting some fans who start questioning your loyalty. And then you get into like, well, I didn't really like the last Avengers film. And then you start getting those fun comments from people about how you're not a real fan, or, and this honestly bugs me more, you are thinking about it incorrectly because you're analyzing it, right? Like, these aren't movies that you should like treat like your art house films, Caleb. These are movies that you have to treat like pure entertainment. I'm like, yeah, but you can analyze pure entertainment. So I think that's been one of the things that's kind of pushed me away from fandoms. The other thing is the toxicity of fandoms, specifically the Star Wars fandom is a great example, with kind of how even before it went into this whole like, let's harass, these people off of Twitter sort of thing. There was still this just around Star Wars, this very divided thing. And I honestly think most of that comes from prequels versus sequels hate. So I think that kind of even predates, or prequels versus originals. So I think that predates the sequels. But there's just kind of this entitlement I feel around a lot of people. So if a Star Wars movie doesn't exactly add up to it, then they go at it hard. And it kind of takes the fun out of being a fandom. And that's not to say you shouldn't critique, right? Like, that's what I was talking about previously. But this whole idea of what is and what isn't a franchise, this entitlement to what you're used to being what that franchise has to be, and then on top of that, you have this idea of, if you don't agree with me about what the franchise should be, then we're going to start a little war within the franchise. But I think there's just also been this other reason where I think I went too hard at being a fan. I think I went into, I have to know everything about something. I have to have an opinion on everything. And that's just not the case, right? Like, you can be a fan of stuff and leave out other parts. And I left a comment on Matt's video about Harry Potter talking about how I'm not going to see the new Fantastic Beasts movie. I haven't read, and I don't plan on reading Cursed Child, right? Like, they're just parts of that fandom that I've kind of cut off, and I've kind of decided, for the time being, I'm just going to stick to what I like, which is the original books. I'm just going to stick to those, read those, listen to the audiobooks, which are great, And likewise, I didn't go see Solo because I just didn't care. I didn't go see Ant-Man because I don't like Ant-Man. A year or two ago, I would have seen both of those movies because I would have felt like I had to. But now I don't feel that. Now I can just skip a movie and I'll be fine, right? And it's actually, it makes you happier if so much of your time, like it is for me, for better or worse, is spent on talking about movies with friends and with people online and to yourself, right? Like walking around my apartment being like, what did I think of that movie? Might as well spend it on movies you care about, right? Like, not movies that you think are going to be excellent or movies that you think are going to be trash. Movies that you actually care about and you want to see. And you want to see them because you think they look interesting, not because you're going to it because you've seen every other Marvel movie. I've kind of moved away from fandoms. And that's not me saying that fandoms are necessarily bad. But for me, being a fan has turned into my personal relationship with a set of media and the stories or the art or the product that they provide. And I've kind of tried going back to what that was like for me as a kid before I delved into like internet fandom. So those are my thoughts on fandoms. I really hope that this conversation continues because the two videos previously have been super interesting. If you guys have thoughts, please leave them in the comments below or go to Matt or Tessa's video, leave comments there as well. And I will see you guys tomorrow.